That's awesome. I mean, you're doing an exceptional job, Caitlin. I was about to say shilling, but promoting OpenView Ventures. Shilling. It's not a bad word. It means that you're passionate about what you guys are doing. Peter Saddington, you're a big game hunter, and guys, we have our sights on someone special today. Only a mother could invest in this idea.
Made this like super artistic.
That is actually absolutely correct. And that's a very, very astute assessment, actually.
True startup story, guys. You got it. Your company just got seed round financed. Congratulations. You're going to the moon. But now you have to scale. You found great talent out in California, New York, Georgia, and even Eastern Europe. So what communications platform will you be using to ensure your international team is always aligned? Well, the answer is easy. Slack.com for Teams. We've used Slack for all of our previous startups, and they've supported us in tremendous ways. And we want to give them a thanks today for supporting vchunting.com. Did you also know that Slack is a great tool for personal use? Yeah, I use my own personal Slack channel to drop in documents, notes, to-dos, and follow-ups to ensure that my workflow throughout the day is right on course. I promise you, if you try out slack.com for personal use, you'll end up using it for your team as well. Go to slack.com to check it out. Welcome everybody to VC Hunting Season 2, and I am super excited for today's guest. It is Caitlin BOLNICK from OpenView Venture Partners. Absolutely, she's hanging out in Florida today. Usually she's up in Boston, but thanks so much for joining the show, Caitlin.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's just jump right into it. We want to know, especially because there's lots of entrepreneurs, lots of founders that follow us here and want to learn more about the money or the people behind the money. And so give us a little bit of a story. How did you get into venture capital?
Sure. Yeah. So I feel like every person who's in VC says this, but I sort of just ended up here. So at risk of being cliche. So I graduated from college and I went out to LA and I worked for a startup there that ultimately became the poster child for failed on-demand startups.
Ooh,
so it was a company called So it was a company called Washio, and it was a on-demand dry cleaning and laundry company. I was an early hire after they had raised a large Series A, and I was a city launcher there. So did everything across the board from growth to BD to product, sort of you name it, and I probably did some work. And I sort of learned two big things there. One was that I wanted to stay far away from consumer as possible after that failure. Okay. And then two, I really wanted to understand like what makes like a solid business at scale. So at that point we were at a Series A company and we were growing sort of at all costs. And so I think I like took away a lot of lessons from that experience. Through that, I had actually launched Boston as a city for us. And I ended up being connected with a few folks there. And I helped found a company there that's still running today. It's now called HQO. At the time, it was called Venture App when I joined. And I really did everything across the board, primarily specializing in product. But still those lessons from Washio sort of stuck in my head. Like I really wanted to understand, what does a business at scale look like? And growing up, I'd always sort of dabbled with the idea of going to business school. And so I said, you know what? I was at Venture App for a couple of years, and I thought, maybe now's a good time to sort of take a step back and look holistically at what businesses really look like at scale and sort of learn the financial side of things that I felt like I was missing from a liberal arts undergrad degree. So ended up spending the summer before going to business school with another early stage venture fund called Accomplice. I worked with a guy there named TJ Mahoney, who is just an incredible networker. I learned so much from him. Ended up going off to business school.
Maybe we should have him on the show.
Yeah, TJ's great. Ended up spending some time in SF at Ripple, the cross-border transaction company. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you some questions about that.
Totally. And just fell in love. But my significant other is CEO of a startup in Boston. So ended up needing to be in Boston for personal reasons, and was looking around and got connected with the folks at OpenView pretty serendipitously, honestly, and just fell in love with their model and sort of the focused approach. And I can get into why OpenView is a little different. But just loved the team. There was no ego. And I was like, as a former operator, I was like, maybe I just try switching sides. And so here I am.
Wow, what an amazing story,
Yeah.
Caitlin. And I'm just gonna say this: you don't downplay your story. It's your story. Plus, I mean, Washio coming your first startup in like laundry services. Come on, I mean,
Yeah.
this is the first time I've ever heard someone tell me that their first experience at an epic fail was at a laundromat. And usually,
Yeah.
the first thing that comes to your mind is, wait, she was hanging out like, iron and stuff. No, it was a
Right.
technology company around that. And so you learned a lot. You seem to be a very studied individual, a self-educator, self-assertive, and a very initiative in terms of what you're looking for. And so you got experiences from B2C. You say you hated it, and got real curious about how to scale companies. What have you learned today from your experience at OpenView Ventures
Yeah.
around scaling? And what are some of the tips and tricks that you could provide to all of our listeners out there?
Yeah. So just to give a little background on OpenView, so where I sort of play in the market is a very, very narrow. I guess it's not so narrow, but to me, like relative to I think some other firms, it's a little more narrow in scope. So we only do B2B software. So like our bread and butter is B2B software at a very specific stage. And so the stage that we invest in is what we refer to as the expansion stage. But what that
Yes.
actually means is it's a business that sort of has a clear product market fit. And a repeatability in sort of its go-to-market. So the beginning trappings of sort of this repeatability. So what that means is that we tend to look at a ton of businesses that are in the same vertical so that we can actually like provide tangible expertise. And I think one of the best parts about that is when you are so focused, you get to learn a lot about the certain types of business models that fall within a very narrow category. So I'm not looking at healthcare. I'm not looking at deep tech. I'm just looking at B2B software. So
which is really unique because, and I want to kind of decompose this idea a little bit around a fund expansion, right? You fund and finance it's expansion startups or companies that are in the expansion mode. And one of the things that I read on your website is you guys focus a lot on product-led growth, or PLG. Can you
PLG, baby.
PLG, baby, I love it. Can you define what PLG is,
Sure.
product-led growth, and why you guys at OpenView Ventures have chosen this particular thesis?
Sure. So product-led growth, and I think it's actually interesting. So in the MongoDB most recent quarterly report, they spoke a little bit about it. And so the idea of product-led growth is that traditionally, I think B2B software companies have been sold from a heavy sales down motion. So you have SDRs, you have BDRs, and there's sort of this motion. And so what we've increasingly seen as sort of the way in which users both engage on a consumer side, but then ultimately engage on a business side, is that there's sort of this bottoms up approach that's occurring. So you or I, as an employee, can adopt a software and then have it actually infiltrate into an organization.
I
So
see.
I actually personally spend about 80 to 85% of my time in all product-led growth businesses. And the idea is these businesses are grown much more organically through a bottoms up approach rather than a traditional sales top down motion.
I see.
Yeah. The one caveat I would add there, though, is that it's not necessarily either or. So we see over time a lot of these product-led growth businesses layering in a sales team over time. But when they start, it really is all about creating an organic community and sort of creating a product with a certain price point that a user or an average employee could use at a company. So from our portfolio, a great example of that is Calendly. So Calendly is the stereotypical sort of bottoms up approach where, you or I would have a link in our email and we would send it to one another. And then you would look at it and say, hey, this is really interesting. And then you would adopt it. And then it sort of goes from there.
Right. I see. That makes a lot of sense. And so what's really unique, I think, about OpenView Ventures is you guys have taken an approach to the expansion stage with this product-led growth. Now, what makes this unique is that you've already you correct me if I'm wrong here, but the assertion is that you've already allowed the startups to kind of de-risk themselves, gain a little bit of traction, have enough that you guys can work with to say, hey, look, you have traction, you have a small community, you're growing in a right direction. You might have the right MRR, you might, monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue, what have you. But where you guys play and where you guys really can provide value is saying, hey, we've seen the patterns. We know we've seen companies in your type of stage of getting a little bit of traction, getting a little bit of growth. let's help you here. Is that really kind of the thesis behind OpenView Ventures, that you guys have de-risked startups and saying, hey, let's let these startups get funded, seed, Series A, whatever. But after that, that's when we can come in and really help them kind of, play with fire. Is that fair?
A little bit, yeah. So I don't know if it's so much about de-risking as it is just the model in which we play. So the idea is you're sort of touching on it, is let's take these companies that are at a certain stage and really add, fuel to the fire. So we actually don't believe in a law of large numbers. So the way in which we invest is also a little different. So
Tell me more.
Right now we're investing out of a $300 million fund. We have about $1 billion under management, but each year we're only making about 5 investments. And that's because we don't believe in a law of large numbers. What we believe in doing is investing in entrepreneurs and teams and really helping them grow. So we have this large team, and I think a lot of VCs say that they're like value add, but we have this team of about 25 individuals who their full-time job is to do contract-based work with our companies.
Ooh.
So things like pricing and packaging, which is like one of the lowest lifting ways in which you can add additional like tangible enterprise value to a company.
Right.
They'll come in and say like, hey, let's do a pricing and packaging project, or let's hire for certain roles when you don't have an HR, like an HR person who's managing that.
It's really a unique model in that you are, again, correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm learning here about your model.
No, I love it.
It seems like you're augmenting or helping augment the startups and saying, hey, there are some real pragmatic operational functions that we can totally provide you. Don't worry about that. We got you. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, and I think it's a conversation with the CEO or the entrepreneur. It's like, let's take a holistic look. Like once we invest, because we make so few investments, if you just think about like the number of people at our firm relative to number of companies, we're all hands on deck for all of our companies, right?
That's really awesome.
The idea is like, once we invest, we sit down with the entrepreneur and say like, let's talk about your business. Like where are there opportunities where we can add tangible enterprise value very quickly, or there's areas where maybe you're looking to hire someone, but you don't have someone there yet. Like, let us take a little bit of that off your plate and work through it. And our team has done that, right? So this team of sort of operators are top notch, So our pricing, the pricing expert on our team was a former pricing consultant, for example. And so these things, we work with them and the results are real. So, we look across our portfolio at Expensify, at Datadog, at Calendly, and we really see a lot of these projects providing substantial value.
That's awesome. I'm wondering here, because it's kind of rose up in my gut as you were speaking about this, is what types of patterns have you seen in terms of expansion stage companies? What do they generally need the most? If you're an expansion stage company and you're having conversations with OpenView Ventures or Caitlin BOLNICK, what are the
big things? Yeah. So I think like there's a couple of different pieces. So for us, it's less about like what round we invest in and more about like where the company is. But generally speaking, we're investing in like Series A to Series C companies. And so I think depending on where you are sort of in that continuum, what you need is a little different. So I spend a lot of my time a little bit on the earlier side of the sort of Series A, Series B side of things. So if you were to look at those companies, I think there's a couple of things that stick out. So one is like pricing and packaging. So like this is an extremely common thing that we work with our companies on. And the idea is, how do you either increase or decrease or change packaging so that you can gain additional revenue without sort of incurring churn, right? So that's a big piece that we spend a lot of time thinking and sort of exploring with our companies. Another one is like recruiting, right? So I think traditionally sort of you can go and you can outsource recruiting for sort of high level positions, but sometimes like you just need an SDR, or like sometimes you just need like a marketing acquisition manager, and you're not necessarily going to go out and like pay someone to do that, but you really need that hire. So we have an internal recruiting team that like a lot of times will recruit for these positions. So they might not necessarily be C-suite, or they might be C-suite for that matter. So I think it's like recruiting, I think it's pricing and packaging. And then the other one I think is just like go to market. So usually like, at a Series A or Series B, you sort of figured out go to market, but there's probably some low hanging fruit. So like, who are the experts that we can connect you with to sort of help, retune one piece or like rethink customer segmentation. So those are just some examples.
Did you know that there's even more value than just audio or video? Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at VC Hunting, and make sure to sign up for the VC Hunting newsletter, where you'll be able to get weekly news on venture capital, startups, founder stories, and the occasional wisdom extracted from Peter's brain. Go to vchunting.com to sign up. And now back to the episode.
That's awesome. I mean, you're doing an exceptional job, Caitlin. I was about to say shilling, but promoting OpenView Ventures. Shilling. It's not a bad word. It means that you're passionate about what you guys are doing, and clearly you're really eloquent in telling me all the ways that you provide value to these companies. It's really, really, really encouraging, especially since I've spoken to hundreds now of venture capitalists, maybe closer to 1,000, that don't provide.
You got a long Rolodex, buddy.
All that value. Well, I've been asking for money for a long time, so as an operator. But let's shift a little bit, because I saw on your resume, I saw in your experience that you spent some time with Ripple, and I'm sure you're quite. You know about the XRP army, and you know about the Twitter trolls and the no coiners and Bitcoin versus Ripple versus all that stuff. Tell me, what is your opinion on cryptocurrencies, and where are we going to be headed with cryptocurrencies, in your opinion, moving into 2020 and beyond?
Yeah, so I think what I think about, I sort of should caveat my experience at Ripple in that I sat within sort of the cross-border transaction side.
Okay.
So I did a little work in terms of like understanding market liquidity across, different regions, but I was mostly I was looking at our B2B portion of the business, which was like bank to bank settlements.
Right.
That being said, I think, we've seen so much on the crypto side of things. So when I first sort of became interested in cryptocurrency and blockchain, there were only a couple of companies that were like viable options that you could work for or participate with. And then I think we saw an absolute flood of sort of, there's just so much, honestly crap in the cryptocurrency market. It made me step back and think like, okay, like what is real and like what's BS versus not. And I think the big thing that needs to happen is like internal regulation and alignment within the cryptocurrency space.
Ooh, I love it. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think that you see sort of and keep in mind that I've been a little removed, so this is me sort of talking not 100% comfortable, but we have the contingent who are pro stable coins, we have the contingent that are pro Ethereum, we have the contingent that are pro Bitcoin, and so the idea is like, how do you create sort of a legitimized front for the people who aren't crypto heads, right? So for the average individual. And so that's where I think like a Robinhood is doing great work, a Coinbase is doing great work, and Ripple is doing great work in terms of just like legitimizing the sort of industry and continuing to push it further.
I will say that's really well said. I think cryptocurrency needs a fresh face. I think it's gotten a bad rap, certainly in the doldrums of 2018 and the doldrums of 2019. It's weird saying that now. We're only a couple of days out of 2019, but the last couple of years haven't been great for cryptocurrency. And I think we're really heading into an unknown territory, because a lot of the pundits back in 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, we're all talking about 2022 is going to be the year that cryptocurrency hit mass adoption. The world's going to change. And if you don't have a Bitcoin, you're not going to be a Bitcoin millionaire. Obviously, none of that has come to pass. And so what's really fascinating as we move into the 2020s and beyond is where cryptocurrency is going to go. But also the marketing, the face that you said, I think really needs a rebranding and a refresh. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. I think that Ripple has actually done a really great job of this. So I think the CEO of Ripple, Brad Garlinghouse, he's done an amazing job, and the team overall at Ripple has done this job of saying like, hey, we're going to do our best. And you can debate this or not, but that we're going to stay out of the fray and we're going to be the adults in the room, right? And I think that you've seen that over time really work in their favor, right? People look at Ripple as a respected company. They trust what comes out of them from sort of the non-crypto contingent, I should say. So I think that they've done a really nice job of that. But I totally agree. I think it's about sort of how do you make cryptocurrency and sort of blockchain approachable to sort of the non-crypto heads.
I love it. And that really is going to be a big opportunity for cryptocurrency in terms of how can people get access, educated, and learn more about this new, I still consider it a nascent technology that, in my opinion, and you might agree here, I think can fundamentally change the world. So That's really
Totally.
awesome. Let's pivot here. We here at VC Hunting do a little bit of hunting and digging, and we want to keep venture capitalists accountable to
Love it.
what they say. On October 3rd, 2019, not too far away, on Twitter, you said a business can hit hard metrics to make it look more attractive when fundraising, but there are always intangibles largely out of your control. Super common one, and I'd love for you to kind of decompose this for me. You said super common one, whether a VC has scar tissue about the market. I don't
Yeah.
think these things are talked about openly enough. What do you mean when you say VC scar tissue about the market? And what does that mean when it comes to metrics?
Yeah, totally. So I think the idea is like, if you have an awesome business and you're sort of hitting these sort of standard metrics, right? Your net retention looks great. Your ARR looks great, but you're in a space that like the investor you're talking to just doesn't like, you're already sort of barking up the wrong tree. And there could be a variety of reasons why that venture investor might not like the space. It might be, so for a great example is like laundry or like on demand. I see like
you got a lot of scar
on-demand
tissue from
space.
laundry, clearly.
I sort of like, reel a little bit. So I think like there's examples like that. So you could have the best business in the world and it's going to be infinitely tougher for that investor to sort of get comfortable with you as an entrepreneur and you like your company versus maybe another investor who just like likes the space more or has like an affinity towards that space.
I love that answer. I was one of the other interviews I did last year was with Bill Bryant from Threshold Ventures.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how it's so important for entrepreneurs and founders to understand two things. Number one, the natural bias of the investors
100%.
that are investing in you. And number two, kind of in the same vein around scar tissue, what type of proclivities, interests, and passions that they have that might not actually connect with you and your startup. And so I think it's really important. It's really wise for you to be able to put that out on blast and let founders and entrepreneurs know that, hey, investors have priorities too. They have biases as well. And it's important, you probably would agree with me here, as a founder or entrepreneur, to ask those questions and say, hey,
absolutely.
Look, is this something that you hate? I mean, is laundry something you hate? Because I think laundry is awesome, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm shocked at how many, I get so many inbound emails from people who are asking about, a great example is like, I just got an email the other day about a blockchain company that they're looking for investment. Like we don't do blockchain. And so that's like a really low lifting thing that you can do. Look at the investors that you're reaching out to, or look at who you're trying to reach out to and connect with, and make sure that they're like in the space that you're playing in, that they don't have any prior scar tissue, that it's something that they could be interested in. And I'm surprised, the more that you can do that, the easier it is. Cause look, like I've been on the operating side. I've been both on a side, like where you couldn't fundraise when you needed to, and then also having successfully fundraised. And the thing is like, fundraising sucks. And like, I know that it does. And so like, the more that you can set yourself up for success and sort of, it's like a dance, right?
Yeah,
like you got to make sure that the person you're dancing with wants to dance. So the more that you can do that in advance, the sort of
you're making me think back to middle school days when the girls were on one side, the boys were on the other side. No one wanted to dance. Well, that's really insightful. I love that idea. And I also love the fact that as an investor, as a VC, that you're willing to bring these out into light and say, hey, founders, we want to help you level up. We want to help you understand the right questions to ask us so that you're not digging in the wrong hole. Right?
Totally.
It's really, really powerful. Here's another quote on Twitter on October 15th, 2019.
Oh God, you're really getting me going.
We did. You said, quote, as a founder, you should be able to clearly articulate what your defensible competitive advantage is. I often hear we're better/different from existing solutions. You just told me your competitive landscape, not why you are uniquely situated to win. Big difference. So here's my question. What do you find would encapsulate a good defensible statement around their startup? Obviously not talking about the landscape, but why them? What types of tips and tricks or words would you give a founder when it comes to being defensible around their startup?
Yeah, I think it's like the fundamental question is like, what is your wow factor, right? Like, what is it about you that's uniquely sort of different? And I think that it becomes hard, particularly in crowded markets, to sort of articulate that. But the better that you can get at sort of like saying like why you are different, not like why you are different than a competitor, but like why you uniquely are situated and different, the stronger that it can be. So whether it be, you know, I have X number of years prior experience in this particular, you know, space, and these are the 4 things that I learned that no one else like knows, or maybe it's I have assembled this expert team, or it's like, you know, the way in which I go to market is different in that it's X, Y, or Z. But too often what I hear is someone saying like, oh, my competitive differentiation is that like I'm faster than my competitor, which like that in and of
It's a
itself,
relative term.
right, exactly. And the other thing is like I'm going to assume that like that faster, unless there's something like fundamentally different about that fast, that like there's going to be some like equivalent fast that's going to come out next, you know?
For
So
sure.
I think it's about really understanding like, and I think that it takes some necessary self-reflection on like your company and you to really think through like, how am I different? Like, what am I doing that is so different that will make me uniquely situated to win? It's like really the question. And if the answer is like, maybe there's not something, then the question is like, okay, well, is it like a brand? Like, do I need to build the best possible brand that I can build? Which we see a lot in the sort of, I think in like, particularly in like business applications and tasks, like task tools, like what is it about it that make you stand out in a crowded market?
I love this. Everything that what rose up in my mind as you were talking about this is I remember years ago at a startup Atlanta, I'm in Atlanta, in Startup Village, Atlanta, there was a pitch day, and one of the guys was essentially saying like, we're better because we're faster. And one of the question was how are you faster? And he literally said, we do like 3 less clicks than our competitor. I'm like, is that really 3 less clicks? Really?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's ridiculously defensible here. But what I really also love is the fact that you're talking about not trying to focus on being better, because there's always someone better. And this reminds me of something that Brad Feld wrote in one of his blog posts like a couple years ago. He said, "Don't be better, be different, be you."
Exactly. And I think it's you know, I think one piece is like you're so focused on your business that you forget that like when you pitch your business, like we don't know it as well as you do. Like if you were to ask me as an operator, I knew every single thing about my business, but then like when I would pitch it, sometimes it wouldn't come across like that. And so the idea is to like think about what it looks like to someone who isn't as familiar.
Right.
And one really powerful feedback to use is like your customers, right? What do your customers say about you that makes you so different? And if you can harness that and say like, this is why my customers can't live without us, that's a great place to start.
I love it. Well, we got a couple more questions here, and then we're going to let you fly. One question is there's been a lot of blogging and newsletters about kind of the saturation of venture capital. And I think, and you've been in this is long enough to know, is that venture capital is certainly at a threshold of changing. And the question I have, it's a little broad question here, but the question I have is, in my opinion, and I'll start here, venture capital really is at its peak in saturation. And so what would you say needs to change in venture capital to make it not only better, but more accessible to the generation, Z, the millennials who are coming up, and Generation Z right now, they're 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, but they're going to be the founders and entrepreneurs of the future. So with the saturation and the total amount of venture capitalists out there, what would you say how venture capital needs to change as we move into the 2020s to 2030s?
Sure. So I think one of the big things is if I look at like when I, even a few years back and I looked at sort of the venture capital community, I think it was really scary for me because I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me, right? It was a bunch of like old white dudes, no offense guys. And that scared me, right?
It is what it is.
I ever become sort of a venture capitalist, or how could I ever become, a CEO down the road when I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me? And so I think the big thing, and I think we've made like incredible strides, but there's still a long way to go, is like continuing to get a more diverse set of people around the table. And we see the sort of like the powerful output of that, right? When you have diversity in the boardroom, when you have diversity in a company, like
absolutely
work better and you have better like ideas, and it's sort of, there's tons of data around it. But so I think it's continuing to sort of push that further and putting, more diverse sort of founders and VCs around the table, quite honestly. And so
are there any specific strategies that OpenView Ventures has in place for diversity? Because I'm finding whenever I've asked this question to other VCs, it's generally 50-50. Some of them say we don't have a strategy. Some of them say they do have a strategy, but the strategy is relatively loosely based on the overall meta idea that diversity is valuable. But I've rarely found venture capitalists who actually have written down, hey, this is our strategy for diversity. And I don't think this is a good or bad thing. I'm just wondering, does OpenView Venture Partner, do they have a strategy specifically tailored to diversity investing, or is that just part of your decision matrix as you look at companies?
Yeah. So one thing is, like, if you look at actually like our employee base at OpenView, we're pretty diverse. Like,
I did notice that
I would say from like a woman male perspective, I think that there's still work to go in terms of like additional diversity, but in terms of just getting like women investors around the table, I think we're doing a really nice job there. I think the other thing that we're doing is we have mandates around trying to invest in women CEOs. So like, I've been pretty vocal about this on Twitter.
That's awesome.
But the idea is like, we are actively looking for women to invest in, but we want to invest in women who are amazing entrepreneurs, not just because they're women, right? So sort of finding the most spectacular women enterprise CEOs that we can, and really sort of investing and doubling down on them. That's our goal moving forward. And to date, we haven't done a great job, but we have mandates in place in terms of like number of women CEOs we're talking to, number of diverse founders that we're trying to help. And if you look across the board, we're doing everything. I would say we're doing a really good job relative to some of our peers around just trying to help increase diversity. So the next goal is trying to get a woman CEO in our portfolio, and we're all hands on deck trying to do so.
Well, this is great because this is going to be syndicated to the entire world. So if you are an excellent, epic, and just top-notch woman CEO founder, we're going to have all the information down below and on the website, vchunting.com. You can connect with Caitlin, and she can hook you up, and you guys can start having those conversations. And
follow me on Twitter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Last and final question. We're going a little bit back here. September 30th, 2019. This is a random tweet. You said, I find it incredibly ironic that the safest way to store a password is to write it down on a piece of paper. Since September, have you figured out a better way to store passwords?
So I'm going to give a shout out to Lee from Tall Poppy. She's the CEO of Tall Poppy. So she is creating this sort of like system to basically make your passwords and sort of your life more secure. And so I went through her whole process, and it's like totally changed how I do security. So like, I found all these like data marts that had all my information based on what she gave me. And so I have since switched to 1Password, and it is not a perfect solution because my like ultimate private key is still stored on a piece of paper, but it is much better. So that's all I got.
So you said private keys. So I have to wonder, what cryptocurrencies are you invested in?
So I actually divested of all of them.
When you got out.
Yeah, I did. But I think I still have a wallet that has some Bitcoin in it, if I'm being totally honest. But that's the only one.
Well, that's awesome. Guys, thank you so much, Caitlin. This has been a great and life-giving interview. Everyone out there, make sure that you check out Caitlin BOLNICK, who, if I might be spilling the beans, who is not going to be Caitlin BOLNICK anymore. In a year or so, you're going to be Caitlin Relas. So congratulations.
Yeah, heard it here first.
Heard it here first, guys. Congratulations on the new engagement. I'm going to give you the final word. Let the world know, where can they connect with you? Where can they find out more about you and your venture firm?
Yeah, totally. So you can go to our website at openview.vc. I hope you might want to check if that's the right one. And then you could follow me on Twitter at Caitlin BOLNICK1, I think is the handle. So always happy to connect with anyone who has any questions, and you can always guarantee to get a straight answer from me. So that's what I got.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. We'll talk soon.
See ya.
True startup story time. Guys, as a founder, I'm often asked, what are my go-to tools and technology that I use as I begin a startup? Well, that's easy. One of them is Dropbox. Dropbox is the easiest way to ensure that all your files and documents are synced on all devices, whether it be mobile, your local desktop, or remote. We want to thank Dropbox for supporting vchunting.com, and make sure to get your 30-day trial free at dropbox.com/business. Wow. You guys know I always love these types of interviews, and what a wonderful interview that we had with Caitlin BOLNICK from OpenView Venture Partners. It was great to discuss her experience within the venture capital world, and I really enjoyed the introduction. I've never heard an individual, individual or even a venture capitalist who got sour grapes, who got sour experience in their first startup, and their first startup being, for her, it was a laundromat, Washio. Now, there was a lot of things that was, I'll be honest, there was a lot of things that were coming up in my mind as I was listening to Caitlin tell her story. And I know it might sound rude, but it's called Washio. It's like almost, the name is almost a little too try hard. You know, it's washing, laundry, Washio, probably using the .io as the end maybe, but it just seems so try hard. And you know, it's unfortunate that it didn't work out, but it gave Caitlin a great experience, taught her about what she doesn't want to be doing, which is B2C, and it gave her the opportunity and frankly her curiosity to get her into the B2B world. Which there's one thing that I really wanted to ask. You guys remember my interview with Ravi Balani from Alchemist Accelerator. He talked about how B2B is sexy, or he was bringing B2B sexy back. And I wrote that down, but I didn't ask. I didn't ask Caitlin if she thought that B2B was sexy. Maybe if she's watching, or any of you guys down there, you guys can leave a comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are on it. But I also love the fact that we dug into her cryptocurrency experience, and that she was coming. She communicated her cryptocurrency experience outside of the hype, outside of the YouTube content generators and YouTube personalities and the people who like to the pundits in the crypto space. Even though she worked with Ripple, which, I mean, I got my Bitcoin shirt on right now. Generally not a big fan because it's centralized and these types of things, or at least that's how the argument goes. But it was just great to hear that she had come out with so much great experience, and the fact that she believes that cryptocurrency is going to be part of our future. It just needs a better face. It needs better marketing. It needs better adoption. And so we're going to be looking into that in 2020 to 2030. Obviously, we're going to be tracking it here on Venture Daily and VC Hunting, for how crypto is going to continue to impact the world. One of the things that I loved is her answer to the whole idea of scar tissue in VCs. This is something that, if you remember from our conversation, I had talked about with Bill Bryant from Threshold Ventures, in that, yes, VCs have priorities, they have needs, they have strategies in mind. And if you're a founder or you're an entrepreneur out there and you're not asking these types of questions, you could actually be putting yourself in a not a great position, because the people you're asking for money from, they're not really feeling your industry. They're not really feeling your market. And so it's a great reminder to all the founders and entrepreneurs out there that you really have to do your diligence on the investors. And that's one of the reasons why we do VC hunting, so that you guys can know the money, learn the people, or learn about the people behind the money, so you can make better informed decisions. And so I loved her answer about scar tissue, and that some VCs, they just have scar tissue like her. She doesn't want to ever work with B2C. She doesn't ever want to work with laundromats or laundry tech, if that's what you want to call it. And so it's just important to know that there's a lot of great questions that you need to ask as a founder when you're looking for money or a venture capital. One of the other things that I really enjoyed is her answer to around competitive advantage and defensible competitive advantage, and talking about, and this is something that I always spend a lot of time talking about on Venture Daily, is that the goal in startups, the goal in your idea is to never be better. Frankly, it's almost impossible to ever be better than anyone else in this technology space. It's to be different. And I know that sounds like a highfalutin thing to say, but really bring your best into it. If you're building a startup, that startup should ooze your personality. It should ooze your passion. It should ooze your differentiating factor, which is number one, yourself. No one else is doing it. No one else is you. No one else can do it the way that you do it. Bring that flavor. Bring who you are to the table. And one of the things that we're going to be spending a lot more time on Venture Daily is talking about personal branding and how you as a founder, how you as an entrepreneur can ensure that the world sees you for truly who you are, your authentic self. And so being a startup founder, you have to be able to bring your full authentic self to the table there and be defensible in the, hey, this is the way that we're doing it. We're not trying to be the next Google, not trying to be the next Facebook. We're just trying to do us. And in many cases, guys, that right there is the defensible strategy, competitive advantage. It's you and nobody else. I'll give you an example from my life. Right here, this guy, Peter, I am the competitive advantage. I am the defensible competitive advantage because there's no one like me. There's no one doing what we're doing. We are the fastest growing venture show on the planet right now. No one's doing what we're doing. No one is trying to reach out to the younger generation, help them have a channel, have a news site that can teach them all about venture capital deals, and the people behind venture capital. I am the defensible strategic advantage. Now, other people could come in and create a news channel on venture capital like we have, but no one's done it so far. So take that for what it's worth. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation that I had with Caitlin BOLNICK from OpenView Venture Partners. It was a great conversation. She's just a great communicator, really exciting, really just passionate, clearly articulate, and clearly intelligent as well. So if you want to learn more about OpenView Venture Partners and Caitlin BOLNICK and what they're up to, and if you're a founder, make sure you check them out. Find your way over to vchunting.com/Caitlin BOLNICK. Thanks, guys, so much for being here, and we'll see you on the next one.